Hi, I'm Nihal. Welcome to Headliners, the podcast that brings you interviews with the biggest names in entertainment, culture, and the arts. This is always an interesting proposition, being offered to speak to Radiohead's Thom Yorke. Now, not only was I lured in by the obvious, which is the man's a creative genius, but also the interview would be alongside his artistic collaborator in a visual art sense, not in a musical sense. And his name is the artist Stanley Donwood. Now, they've worked together on the artwork for every Radiohead release since 1994. And they have 2 books out showcasing their work together. So if you are a Radiohead fan, you will want to see these books. If you're an art fan, you will want to see these books. Kid A Amnesia, or Kid A Amnesia, and Fear Stalks the Land are the name of the 2 books. Now, I began by asking them both how they stayed fresh creatively, specifically how the battle against method and habit was going.
Yeah, you've got the repeating yourself thing.
Especially, right? Yeah, and also finding something where you're very comfortable and you know that you're going to do something that will be accepted by people, which is, it's obviously great from some points of view, but not from others. Not if you want to do something different.
Not if you want to do something that actually speaks to you. No, if you want to surprise yourself. You know, right now, for example, we're sitting here, we're trying to do, we both have paintbrushes in our hand. Well, we don't right now, we have a cup of tea, but
yeah,
we spent the last 3 weeks on and off trying to develop something new for the Smile record. And that is a process of breaking habit. You start where you think you should start, and then you have to jettison the should bit. It should be like this. No, but it's not. Because that's not satisfying. Okay, well, where else do we go? Mild panic. And then a process of finding something new, and then another pause of mild panic. And then onwards from there, really, fluctuating between, okay, this could be good, to mild panic.
Yeah, by which time, when we've done that a few times, both the method and the habit should be completely destroyed.
How long after the success of OK Computer and all that came with that did you want to be creative again, or feel that you could be?
Well, I didn't stop because I didn't have to go on tour and endlessly promote the same material. So I doesn't apply to me, really. I just carried on doing whatever I was doing. Cyber conference or something like that.
Yeah, mostly.
Quaintly. Internet stuff back in those days. That when the internet used to be kind of fun.
Yes. Yeah, that didn't quite turn out how we all thought it was. Was it, Stanley?
No, it certainly didn't.
I was very impressed because he had the KLF to do a talk one time.
Just one of them. And Gimpo. No, it was mostly Gimpo and Bill Drummond just standing in a corner glowering.
If your listeners know about, can remember far back as the KLF and burning £1 million, etc.
Yes.
Anyway, so he was doing that
in the days of myth and legend.
Yeah. Yes. He was doing that, and I was on stage with the band. Not quite really, not really feeling it anymore. There was a lot to that, though. It was a big transition to make. We'd booked one tour for OK Computer, which was a reasonable sized tour, and then our agent was swapping the venues for twice the size, but we had no extra sort of lights or anything. So suddenly there was this I suddenly had to sort of psych myself into being twice the size, which in my case is not easy. And then when it sort of finished, I didn't stop being creative, but at the same time, everything I was writing, I was just shooting holes through all the time, and I was actually when we started going through all our notebooks notebooks and the bits of paper and the scraps that we left around the studio that somebody cleverly picked up afterwards. There's a lot of just self
flagellation.
Not quite flagellation, but like just trying to preempt any sort of mistake, any like repetition. So a lot of it was like a super scathing, and everything left unfinished. And musically, I made a terrible error, really, in the sense that I insisted that we all go and start recording with absolutely no preparation, no rehearsal time at all, so no one knew what was going on. Which I thought, well, we'll capture golden moments, but mostly what we captured was frustration and confusion for quite some time, But that was just, I guess, that's part of the process. But in terms of sort of when we got to the Kid Amnesiac sort of period, Kid A Amnesiac period, it was like we just sort of had to keep pushing through these walls and then not really flailing around, not knowing what we're doing, painting landscapes and creating all these creatures and writing these short stories and making all this music and hanging out together for crazy amounts of time, and stuff just sort of happening despite ourselves rather than because of ourselves.
We were just doing as much as possible and throwing it all around. It was like just attempting to throw as many arrows that one of them would hit some sort of target or at least enable us to figure out what the target was, because it was a very chaotic process, but not aimless.
No, not aimless. And it was, I mean, I think we talk about it now like it's this tortured thing, but it was actually quite a lot of fun because it was the first time in our lives we'd had our own creative space. I mean, I've been, like everybody else, I've been watching the Beatles stuff, about Let It Be. And when they moved to Apple into the basement and it's their space and you can see them growing in confidence, it's like, I sort of really identify with that, with like, okay, finally we've got our own space. Finally we can do what we want. There was a lot of that going on, luckily, because otherwise we'd have never got anywhere.
Stanley, was there a different Thom Yorke that returned from touring OK Computer than the one who left?
No, not at all. He might feel like he was very different, but as far as I'm concerned, not really. No, I would say not. I can't really say any more than that.
So the methodology changed, though, to make the music, but not the art, not the visual art.
No, everything had changed, but that was due to sort of circumstances and I guess the huge success and the money that came with it, because they were able to have a studio where instead of kind of renting places, there was a place where we could all work, and it was like a chaotic art school without any tutors, without any timetable, and I guess that was a real privilege to be able to work in that way.
Yeah, no deadline.
No deadline. And the record label had totally chilled out with all that. You can only have this and you can only have that, and you want it in a few months.
In that respect, we changed, but I don't necessarily think that was a bad thing. It was we did have to sort of move away from where we got to. I mean, when you are on the road for too long, life becomes a little bit two-dimensional. So you have to become three-dimensional again, which takes a bit of squeezing.
What's the power dynamic between you two?
I'm the boss.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I don't know.
I do.
Come on, Thom.
Go on, you tell me.
Well, there's only one of us who can actually do this, and the other one pretends he can.
What? Have you seen what I do when you're not around? It's terrible.
You've seen what I do when I'm not around.
That's true as well. Yeah, okay.
I just do like lines, endless lines.
I don't know.
Punishment.
Am I the straight one or straight or are you? Which one's canon and which one's ball?
Weirdly enough, that reference is not in the book.
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
You can write your own review on Amazon. Yeah.
We managed to not answer the question as well.
Yeah,
quite
we have.
deftly.
I know.
Yeah.
There you
Well, I think I'm just very intrigued by, because power dynamics change between people, especially people that are involved as you are in creating something at such close quarters.
Yeah, and things change over the years. I mean, like...
we're very different people.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Different at all. But I think from my point of view, like, it's a relatively recent a perspective change to see what we're doing as anything other than producing sleeves for records. Like, and that we took that on because we never really wanted, when we first signed a record contract, you get introduced to the sort of graphic designing people and they show you these ideas and it's just like, well, none of this speaks to me. And wait a minute, I went to art college. So, but actually, especially me, I sort of evaded calling this art in any way at all because I have I have zero confidence in what I'm doing. However, I really enjoy throwing ideas around, but I'm unable to see through my ideas. And equally, Dan is deft at like basically pulling stuff out of a hat in a way that just blows my mind in all different directions. Where it is, I'm a collaborator. I'm happy when I'm working with other people. If I'm working on my own, I just don't get anywhere really.
Yeah, I think that's true of myself as well. I can sort of sit there and get ever increasingly detailed and neurotic about what I'm doing. And what I find very difficult is to break away from that. So it's a kind of a collaboration that works really well.
I don't have a steady hand when I'm holding a paintbrush, put it that way.
Okay.
So, okay, but your confidence in your own artistic abilities, Stanley, certainly is in contrast to Thom's.
Really? No.
Well, it must be. How do you get anything done if you're both going, well, that's rubbish? Well, I'm more rubbish than you.
Because it's too late and we've got to give them something. Really.
but you didn't have any deadlines. You didn't have any deadlines.
Well, we did in the end because we had to do something. 2 years, really.
Yeah.
We had to do something. And it was very hurried towards the end.
It was.
We didn't have a front cover. It didn't have a title for the record. Or any sort of design plan for it.
What you mean? Exactly like we are now.
Exactly.
With the smile.
Absolutely nothing. I found them recently. I found all the printouts with all the different what Kid A could have looked like and could have been called, and it's we definitely made the right choice. There were some bad things.
There always are.
There were some bad things.
But
we showed them to everybody. We're up really late. We had to do all this because we didn't know what we were going to do. We had way too much stuff, as is now evident from that digital exhibition and 2 books and all the other. So
finally got in there.
Oh yeah, available in all blah blah blah. In bookshops.
Don't worry, it was coming. I was going to bring it in. I was definitely going to.
Yeah, well,
just making sure.
We're just doing
Sale.
Yeah. We taped everything up to the surfaces in the kitchen and the studios for when all the rest of the band came in the morning.
We had a shared kitchen.
Yeah.
What were those moments like? I'm not sure how long you spent there, but in the Pompidou Centre in Paris, wandering around looking at this Hockney exhibition.
One thing, and it hangs around like a.
Was it really an epiphany?
It kind of was, yeah. I mean, we're both big fans of Mr. Hockney's work.
Yeah.
But it really kind of blew our heads off that he'd made that kind of.
But also, I mean, this was happening all the time. I think we were just very receptive because another place the band were rehearsing, or well, actually just sort of marking time, was Copenhagen. And we went there and there was just the way that trees had been pruned in the park that led to the art museum in Copenhagen was a thing.
Yeah, and that ended up being Tree Fingers.
Yeah. and also there was some sort of expressionist print on the wall of a restaurant we went to that I kind of copied, which was where all the pointy trees, pointy mountains comes from.
And also they had an exhibition about Egyptian artifacts, and they had these figures in boats, which I immediately went back and wrote Pyramid Song, literally just basically about this idea of, because there was a little note with it that claimed that these characters, whatever, could travel in space with these boats.
Yeah, so it wasn't just the Pompidou. We were kind of like desperate for ideas, is one way of putting it.
No, I'd say open and receptive.
Open and receptive is a much better way of putting it, when you edit it.
Well, I guess, did that exhibition, it's a very stark example of encouraging you to break out of method and habit.
I really wanted to get out of just using a computer all the time, because all of OK Computer was done with a little tablet and a what do you call it, the stylus. And it was it was A5 or something. It was tiny, this little thing we had. So, and all of that, I was really concerned that we were just doing hand-to-eye coordination and just using our minds. And I got this idea from somewhere that the body contains, in your body you contain all these memories, and they're all sort of locked in your nerves or muscles. And somehow if we got these massive canvases and started painting massive gestural work, we would get somewhere really different. So it was a very deliberate thing, and Hockney certainly didn't hurt.
There was this thing about landscapes, right? And then it ended up not just being in the artwork, but in the music. And I'm not quite sure why, but I do remember that things like going to see the Hockney exhibition and being stuck in a snowdrift in Japan on tour, these things really mattered to me a lot. Like, and when we finished touring and I was walking a lot in on the moors and stuff down in Cornwall, this really mattered. So in a way, I think when we saw the Hockney thing, and I think we'd been talking about landscape and how to use it, but we didn't dare. We didn't dare think in terms of like, oh, maybe we could just do massive abstract canvases. And it took a long time to actually get to that point. But as that was happening, and as Dan started putting up these big canvases and just throwing it at them, we were kind of doing a similar thing with the music. We were like, because part of one of the good byproducts of not just having a bunch of songs to start with and bashing them out was we were experimenting a lot with sounds and instruments, and Johnny was bringing his Martin though, and we were using synthesizers a lot, and Colin was exploring programming, all these, it ended up just being one more confirmation that maybe we should be heading in that way. Right at the beginning was like, well, if Hockney's doing it, it must be cool.
Yeah, it was. It was definitely. It was kind of revelatory to see someone using bright colours and just really decisive, expressive marks without caring at all. Because Hockney had already got to a point where he could do whatever he wanted, and he chose landscape of all things at that point. Which in the wake of all of the conceptual art, all of the Saatchi sponsored Brit art stuff,
which we really
not massively keen on. And then to see someone who's a veteran of various art movements to just disavow them all and just do what he wanted, it was brilliant.
How comfortable or uncomfortable are you looking through Kid Amnesia, the book of Radiohead artwork?
It's kind of weird. The thing that I keep thinking is that it feels like we did all this stuff on purpose 20 years ago, and then sort of left it until the technology was right, so we could do it in this way. Because as something to wrap around a CD, we kind of over-engineered it a little bit. So
we did it.
Yeah. So it's kind of, I'm really glad that, because I was quite resistant in my mind to doing this, because I wasn't a very happy person back then. So I didn't particularly want to revisit that But in fact, it was fine because I'm not that person anymore.
Right.
And it was really gratifying to see how well it worked. As a book, we didn't make this stuff to go in a book. We didn't make it to go in a digital exhibition. We didn't make. I mean, I was totally opposed to keeping anything or copyrighting anything or anything. So it's amazing that we've still got it.
Yeah.
Is that the same feeling for you, Thom? Of who you were then 20 years ago to who you are now?
Well, when I look at it, I remember when we started digging up all these images and so on, and video and everything, and when we were doing it in the context of an exhibition, so we were doing it in the context of like putting it actually in a space, and then it became this virtual exhibition, then it became like developing it in a different way. So I've been looking at it in this context of like going back to all these ideas and the finished images, but what they represented and where we were in our heads and the sort of things we were imagining, which is bonkers to me to sort of be able to go back there and remember exactly what it was we were trying to do and see how close we were getting. So there's all that sort of thing. But there's also at the time, like I said at the beginning, I had absolutely no feeling at all that this was what you could call art. I just figured we were just throwing it around because we wanted to it all mattered to us in terms of trying to make this record, that it was all about trying to make a record and trying to move on from the basic sort of, here's another song with a chorus and blah, blah, blah. And, let's move somewhere new. Let's go somewhere new, and it's amazing how much doing all this visual work really helped me personally feel confident about what I was doing in the music as well, and feel confident about being widely creative, not narrowly creative, which really helped me sort of just loosen up and see things in a slightly different perspective. My choice of my path of in life and where I'd ended up. Like, oh, okay, maybe there is a reason why I need to do this, wider than just, if it was just songwriting and in this particular narrow context of being on tour, I think I would have burnt out. But the fact it became something wider and more free for me just helped me stay sane.
Do you need Stanley to tell you it's good?
No. Do you?
No,
I don't think so.
Don't think it quite works like that. It's the same as works with the music.
Like, you were an A-star.
You don't need that.
Do you mark it? Yes, Stanley. Do you mark Thom's work when he brings it?
No. It doesn't work like that. It's kind of, I don't know. What do you call it?
I don't think we're looking for validation.
No.
Right, that was the word.
Because we're always. It's if we're trying to do something, it's in the context of a collaboration. So it's like I'm not standing there trying to own it. You know what I mean?
And it's almost like it's not either of us doing it. It's both of us doing it. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Because we neither know what it's going to look like when we start, and we don't know who's going to do the thing that's going to make it work, and we don't know at what point we're going to stop.
Yeah,
whatever it is, either.
Is it similar levels of pleasure and joy brought to you by creating visual art that it is from creating music for Radiohead, Thom?
You missed out Panic.
Yeah.
I did miss out Panic. You're absolutely right. I did miss out. But the Panic is at the beginning of the process, isn't it?
No.
Is it throughout?
Oh, wow. Ways of it throughout, right up until the final moment when it's far too late.
Yeah.
Are they the same thing? Yeah, they are. I mean, yeah, especially nowadays. Like when I started out, I went to art college because I thought it was a strong look. You know what I mean? Like that's what people did. So, but I never saw myself as an artist in that respect. I mean, I only saw myself as an artist because my art teacher at school was like, "You should go to art school." I'm like, "Ha ha, funny." You know, no, really, you should. So I always wanted to be a songwriter, and then I realised that there was more that I wanted to do than that, and all of that informed the way I wrote songs, because ultimately that's where everything really finally ends up. But I find a lot of benefit from the fact that I don't just sit there bashing out chords and sweating out words. I think of it in terms of visuals, and I think of it in terms of sound, and I think of it, I've really enjoyed like doing a soundtrack for the first time, for example, and I enjoy the fact that I can still collaborate with Mr. Liquid here, because it means like I've got something that, they all inform each other, and it makes me feel, it keeps me loose.
That panic, do you feel it as well, Stanley, or is that something that Thom owns?
Yeah. No, it's impossible to copyright. It's there for everybody. No, yeah. I'm not overbrimming with self-confidence. So panic is something I'm familiar with mostly at night.
I think
it is a kind of horrible way.
It is quite spectacular, the lack of confidence we've managed to share.
I know. But then for people who haven't achieved what you've both achieved and are thinking, well, if with all of the, and I guess it depends, it depends what you rate as success or what you find as successful, but with everything that you've achieved and how globally successful it's been, how you still feel that way?
Because it matters what we think.
Yes, that is true.
I'm very happy to show any work that I make to my partner and my kids, because I know they'll be absolutely merciless. And they won't.
It's true, I've seen them.
They won't plan around if there's anything. They were all of the opinions. Something's either good or it's and it's not. It can't be anything else. There's no middle ground, because anything in the middle is just kind of questionable. So something's either, it's either good or it's not. And I'm kind of always worried that it's not.
Do you look back and say to yourself anything from your music catalogue and say that wasn't, or do you let Stanley's kids review previous records for their merciless review of it?
No, I mean, like when we first started out and we signed a record deal and we made a record, we clearly didn't know what the hell was going on. And we needed to immediately get in the studio and get to grips with, we when we signed the record to the record company, said, we don't want any money except for a van and some equipment, please, because we know we don't know what we're doing. And then we get this phone call like a year later, while we're on the road with God, supporting some juggler or whatever, I don't know. And, saying, oh, Creep's a huge hit in Israel and America and you need to go and visit them immediately. And we're like, you what? We're not ready yet. So we made a lot of mistakes early on, like it's really, really important to do. Like, it's important to make lots of mistakes. It's important to get past that. I mean, the panic set in straight after that when Creep was a big hit. And suddenly we're like, okay, everyone's going to expect that, and that sort of basically happened by accident, and we've no intention of doing that again, etc., etc. We managed to survive that, and I think that's the biggest of the lessons that we could have learned. Really, was like, okay, well, we're never going back there again. We'll just carry on, wherever we need to be. That's where we're going to be. I mean, I think we're extremely fortunate. To have had faith put in us, and tolerance. When I went to our record company back in the day and said, yeah, you're not doing the artwork, I'm going to do it with my mate from art college. They were like, okay. When we said, we're going to take over our own website, you can't do it because we know what we're doing and you don't. They went, okay. They were always kind of like, they let it happen.
In retrospect, they were very laissez-faire about everything.
Yeah, so we were very fortunate. They let us do that because we had an initial amount of success. We hadn't had that, etc., etc. But, in terms of like, what do you see as mistakes? I'm like, well, I see that we make mistakes all the time, but we try and not worry about it. I don't see the mistakes in terms of profound mistakes and maybe slight decisions. Oh, well, maybe we could have done that better, but that was good at the time. Moving on now. And to me, the key is the moving on bit. Always moving on.
The mistakes are as much a part of the palette as the things that go right, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you for handing over one of the most precious thing, time, to us here on 5 Live to have a conversation with us. Thank you so much.
I'm going to get our paintbrushes back then.
Yeah.
Is it just a quick one? Have you moved on from having to create in absolutely freezing environments? Do you now like heat when you're painting?
Yeah, definitely. We've got a heater in this
Little
studio.
tiny shed.
Preparing the canvases, we've still got to do outside, and there is snow on the ground, so we're still an element of
probably dripping on our preparation of the canvases as we speak.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, we should probably do something like that.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to let you go off and do that. Thom and Stanley, thank you so much.
Cheers, Nihal.
Cheers.